Hello, good morning. Today our guest is Chala Amante Abate, and we're going to be talking about foreign aid. The title of Chala's paper is The Relationship Between Aid and Economic Growth of Developing Countries. Does institutional quality and economic freedom matter? Chala, what is foreign aid?
Foreign aid is mostly in the form of money, but also other than money that received by domestic country, but the source is abroad. So we can say foreign aid is assistance that um, accepted from foreign countries or donors.
And is Africa a primary recipient of foreign aid?
Africa yeah, it's known that Africa receives huge amounts of aid, not only Africa but also Asian countries. Um, these two continents are primarily recipients of foreign aid from Europe and also from mostly from United States of America.
And is foreign aid a source of growth?
Um, This is a controversial and a debatable issue. It's not straightforward. We cannot say aid constitutes directly source of economic growth or the way around. It depends, it depends on the amount of aid received and also conditions in the recipient countries. They're key players, by the way, and also the motives behind giving some aid to developing countries matters. Is it really these donors are committed to supporting the economy of um, the recipients? That's questionable because sometimes they are motivated by their own some strategies and politically motivated, and so it is not healthy motive. So the motive itself determines, for example, the military aid by no means can improve economic status of the recipient, the receiving country. Some religious-oriented foreign aid, I don't see they can also contribute to the economy. So, anyways, it depends on the issues on hand. So, not straightforward. You cannot say it directly improves the economy of the recipient.
What projects are usually financed using foreign aid in Africa?
In Africa, the aids are usually they take the form of humanitarian assistance when, for example, following if the famine outbreak, then they respond to the, for example, USAID usually mostly focus on this. So the projects you're talking about, that's it's not significant. By the way, the aid can assist the developing countries with their development endeavors. If it is spent on the project, on the infrastructure, but we don't often see aid directed toward these activities. Yeah.
Back to your earlier point about aid serving the motives of the provider. So there's the concept of tied aid. So countries might get money, however, that money is linked to buying products from, let's say, American or British manufacturers, or buying food from their from their agricultural producers. The concept of tied aid. So tied aid might not serve the developmental objectives of a developing country.
Yeah, I think so. So first of all, it is and they rely on this aid because they think that aid will increase the purchasing power of the recipient country, and then to widen the market. For example, the industry of foreign aid, the Marshall Plan is seen to be successful, but the Marshall Plan was primarily aimed at increasing the purchasing power of the Europe, because to bring out of the difficulties with hard currency that the Europe are facing due to the war. So it is just to enable, the goods and services produced in the donor countries to get a market to the receiving country. So I don't think if it is tied aid, uh, cannot improve the development or growth of receiving country.
Chala, has aid been a failure in Africa?
Yeah, so I think so, because in modern times, the aid is have a history of 70 years since 1947, 48. So, but Africa, even in Africa, during 1950, the level of development of Africa is better than that of the Asia. But despite receiving aid for this much of years, um, um, around 8 decades, nothing positive thing is coming out. So aid I cannot say aid is successful in Africa, is failing rather.
And why is it failing? Is it a result of the inability of providers to monitor investment? Because I'm going to call aid investments, because aid is really employed to enhance the quality of a country. So are providers failing to monitor the aid? Is it due to political corruption? Why is aid failing?
Um, in the first place, aid, for example, let's say $1 million then given as an aid to some X country, then this $1 million does not arrive that country in its entirety. There's some expenses for administration purposes. Some goes to those bureaucrats because of the underdevelopment of bureaucratic or institutions. So only limited amount of those pledged will actually go to the receiving country, and also um, it doesn't really reach the poor, those in need. Always those who are better off benefit from the aid than the poor, the target one. So it's a kind of lost strategy. It doesn't serve the purpose for which it was aimed at first. So the main failure, as I think, is its transaction cost, or the cost of administering this aid is one factor, and also the institutional quality in the developing country, in the receiving country, also matters more.
Some have argued that aid programs are not financing the the right initiative. So in Jamaica, the European Union has sponsored agricultural projects, for example, in banana and sugar, but agriculture in Jamaica has not been competitive for a long time. So I've done some research on foreign aid in Asian countries like South Korea, and aid projects finance research, science, and they built institutions that could accelerate development. So is this also a problem that sometimes the aid is not properly targeted?
Yeah, that's a main problem behind that. So it's not used for what it was targeted, or um, and also, and one of the motive, as we said before, is the motive matters. For example, in terms of, for instance, during the Marshall Plan, the American concern, the donor is um, just to increase the purchasing power of the receiving country, and then so that uh, America can sell its goods in Europe more. So they also, along that, they require the receiving countries, the European at that time, to improve the economic freedom also. And so what should be interesting here is that, um, first of all, the target is missed. The target, if it is token, the real thing is not to help the economy. The real thing is not helping the economy. But in token, they may say we do this and that, or this can solve this problem. It might be said, but actually we don't get it implemented that way. So
Shala, should foreign aid even finance social programs?
sorry.
Should foreign aid finance social programs? Is that really the best strategy to help the poor?
Yeah, of course. Energy and the flow and the poor economics, what they say that rather than giving money uh, directly, in cash, rather than that, for example, you can buy the bed net and give the poor so that they could be insulated from malaria or disease. So the point is, in social programs like schooling and health institutions, by establishing and improving them, then the poor can access that social programs, can participate in it even. So uh, I think it is through social programming it's possible to get aid uh, doing good things. So I think so.
Yes, I agree with that point. Social programs can alleviate health challenges. So you refer to marijuana and there are other diseases, but on a broader level, would it make more sense to target the private sector in developing countries because the private sector is the engine of growth? Economic freedom promotes economic growth, and the best way to lift people out of poverty is to promote economic growth. The
Yeah,
percentage of welfare in any society is really a small stock of wealth. So many of these social programs are not quite feasible. Health and education are a bit targeted, but why would you spend money in a community to scale a struggling business when you can target the private sector to deliver greater returns? Developing countries have high levels of entrepreneurship because of economic backwardness. Necessity-driven entrepreneurship is not correlated with growth. So I've never been a fan of more social programs in developing countries. So hello, Charlo.
uh, would you repeat that? Sorry.
I said I've never been a fan of more social programs in developing countries. I think that it is better to target the private sector because the private sector is the engine of growth.
Um, so yeah, of course, but the even if it's engine of growth, there is a private sector. I would say you say private sector. These private sectors are not designed by their alone. By the way, they are in developing countries. You don't find capitalism like you find in America or in Europe. So again, is that private sector is for capitalism, free market, all these things are token. It cannot be out of the influence of the governments. For example, here in Ethiopia, to import a single automobile, then the tax is just 100% or more than 100%. Twofold. So uh, this private sector, they are not independent by themselves. They cannot be outside the influence of the government, and so I cannot I can't see the success at that way.
In developing countries like Ethiopia and Jamaica, I know the data for Jamaica, based on its level of unproductive entrepreneurship, Jamaica is among the top 5 in the world. So you're right. Countries in the developing world, many of them lack institutions and the culture that can promote long-term and high quality innovation. So studies, for instance, show that free market institutions are more successful in high trust countries with economic freedom. And you just mentioned the case of Ethiopia, where it's difficult for the private sector to survive without the government. So now we're going to get to the important part of your article, institutional quality. What do you mean by institutional quality?
Yeah, institutional quality is, it's, for example, the government effectiveness is one form of the institutional quality. Then is the efficiency and the capability with which government develops the policies and then enforce them. It has something to do with the rule of law, the control of corruption. So this is what we say that if, for example, if there is the control of corruption is in a good state, then we can say that a country has more quality, high quality of institutions. So it has. I obtained the data from uh, um, global worldwide database. There's 60 dimensions out there. So I took the arithmetic mean of all these indicators because they are equally, more or less equally important. So the ability of the government to develop and enforce policies, the rule of laws, the control of corruptions, the absence of violence, all these are uh, part of institution quality.
And what about economic institutions and their tolerance for commerce? How should economic institutions be organized?
Uh, yeah, it's hard for them to get organized, but simply in general, we can say that economic institutions like free trade, you know, uh, it's just when the government control, it shows the influence of governments on the economic activity in that country. The more the influence, the lower the economic freedom. For example, the free association, licensing, and openness, the restrictions, the absence or presence of restrictions on the import and export of free trade. There are around 12 indicators out there, but so economic institutions have this.
Chala, do some governments get it wrong? So I know that it is difficult for developing countries to extract taxes because of capacity issues and governance issues. Since these countries tend to be low capacity states, in order to extract resources, they tend to rely on regulations and taxes. But for the economy to grow, people must have resources to invest, save, and spend. So do these countries get it wrong in the sense that their focus is to create government entities to attract revenues when in reality they should actually be promoting economic freedom so that people can create wealth and have more money to give to the government since they need the money.
Yeah, they need money, and raising tax is a normal operation of any government in everywhere. So they should do that, but it should not be excessive. You know, for example, 100 and even more than 100% taxing to import something is it seems to be there. So it is excessive. It should not be excessive, but it should be managed. Uh, so they are not getting wrong by collecting taxes. Uh, they are wrong for going this much longer.
All right, Chala. Now we're going to talk about institutional quality some more and then economic freedom. So countries which are higher level of institutional quality, are they better able to exploit foreign aid?
Many results show this. That while reading for my article, but I came across the limited findings who um, who found that aid, the influence of aid on economic growth is neutral with respect to institutions. But one So, but mostly it matters. It perform better in countries with higher institutional quality. The reason is that, for example, in a country, higher institutional quality means higher control corruption or lower corruption. The interpretation they go this way. So with a lower corruption, so the relatively higher amounts of the aid received.
And what about economic freedom, Chala? Is economic freedom having a positive effect on foreign aid? Chala? Hello? What about economic freedom? All right.